Welcome to Daikaiju Network Podcast, episode 135. I am your co-host, Kent. I'm wearing no pants, and with me is your
Jason,
other
what's up,
co-host.
everyone? And I am indeed wearing pants.
I am too, but I just thought I'd wake anybody up who's asleep at the wheel. Today, we will be discussing Dragon Wars. But before we get into that, a little bit of housekeeping. After today's episode, we are going to change things up for a little
Yep.
while here. What we're going to do is, instead of doing commentaries and doing these regular movie discussions, what we're going to be doing is our Toku Zone. Anybody who's been listening to us
Series
long enough
premiere,
or has
by the
gone
way.
back and listened, yes, anybody who has listened to some of our previous episodes from maybe a few years back will know that we used to have a sub-segment called Toku Zone, where in the past what we did is we covered several episodes at a time of the original Ultraman, and then we also did Iron King. What we decided to do is to sort of take a break from the regular movie discussion, movie commentaries, and we're going to move into an actual show, Toku Zone, for a while. And we still haven't finalized how many episodes of the show we're going to do per episode. But the first series that we're going to cover is Johnny Sacco and his flying robot.
Mhm.
So we kind of figured roughly, depending upon, again, how many episodes we decide to do per show, this is a project that'll take anywhere between 8 to 9 months to do. So, and that's assuming we do 2 podcasts a month like we typically do.
Yep.
So that's what we're looking to do starting a couple weeks from now. Today, what
Yep.
is
The
today?
8th.
The 8th? So, like, roughly the 22nd, we're going to start covering Johnny Sacco and his flying robot. And so, what you can expect from Toku Zone is not only 8 to 9 months of coverage of that show, but starting off in the inaugural episode of not just Toku Zone, but of the Johnny Sacco series, we're going to cover a couple of episodes of the show. And then we're also going to try to do the best we can to give sort of a history of the show to kind of introduce it to anybody and for fun and
Mhm.
educational purposes. And then after that first episode, it will strictly be just covering, X amount of episodes that we decide to cover, which will be anywhere between three to
Yep.
four episodes of that series going forward. So for a while, we're going to cover
And
that. And then, kind of once we get close to the end of covering Johnny Sacco, we will just kind of reassess everything and figure out, excuse me, do we want to continue Toku Zone for a while with a different series, or do we want to come back and do some commentaries and movies? I'm going to guess we're going to do commentaries and movies because it will have been a while, but we'll just kind of reassess everything and let everybody know when the
and
time comes.
we'll just not cover Johnny Sacco and his flying robot exclusively on Toku Zone. We'll also be covering
Right.
other news bits here and there on other series relating to Ultraman, even Kamen Rider, and possibly some of the others coming from Japan as well.
And depending upon how things go with Godzilla versus Kong, we may, if that were to be released at some point, let's say later this year, early next year, while we're doing Toku Zone, we will stop Toku Zone for at least one show, and we will cover that film. So we're just going to kind of, other than the possibility of anything happening with Godzilla versus Kong, we're going to kind of leave kaiju aside, at least with the podcast here for a while, and just dive in to Johnny Sacco and his flying robot. And then at some point when we come back to the Toku Zone, we'll cover a different series. What that is, we don't know because, like I said, this is going to take 8 to 9 months anyways, and we'll probably after that do some more discussions and
Right.
commentaries for a while. So we'll just kind of assess things and see
Hmm.
how they go.
And before we get to the meat and potatoes of everything, I just want to mention that we are on these following streaming and podcast networks as far as streaming. Obviously, YouTube, Twitch, Facebook Live, Periscope, and D Live. And on the podcast networks, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, or Google Play, iHeartRadio, Spotify, and tune in. And you can also follow us and like and subscribe to the following social media networks that we are on. As you can see on the screen there, just search for Daikaiju Network. And we've got our own website over at daikaijunetwork.com.
And anywhere where you download the podcast where necessary, please rate and review, more specifically our podcast, please. 5 stars is what we would appreciate. Because that makes us more visible. The more reviews we get, but also the more 5-ish star reviews that we get makes us more visible, and we're counting on all of our listeners to do
And
that.
on
So,
YouTube, if after you subscribe to us, make sure to hit that notification bell icon. And I know there's a few options. Don't hit the personalized option. Do the all notifications. So if you want to know what we're doing or when we're live on YouTube, then you'll at least get a notification through there.
all right. And with that, are we ready to move in to Dragon
Yeah,
Wars?
let's do it.
All right. So we are covering Dragon Wars D War. Talk about a redundant title. Um, before we get into a little bit of discussion, I just want to give a bit of like release history and stuff with this film. I found some conflicting information, so I'm going to do the best I can to report the most accurate findings. Okay, so Dragon Wars was released in the United States on September 14th of 2007. The budget was approximately 32 million, and it made nearly 1 million in the US and over 75 million worldwide. Director Shim Hyung-rae, hopefully I pronounced that correctly, he directed the 1999/2001 Yongari,
I never
a
knew
wonderful
that.
film. The film was supposed to be a sequel originally to Yongari, but of course things changed during pre-production and all that. The original runtime was between 107-110 minutes. I got conflicting reports on that, so that's why I said between 107-110 minutes, but it was cut back due to preview screenings giving feedback that the pace of the film needed to be addressed. However, it appears the original runtime was preserved for the European market. And a sequel, last I looked, has been in limbo for roughly 4 years now. So there's a little bit of
I never knew that there
information.
was a sequel in plans. And a nice little
I didn't either until
and a little
researching this.
nice tidbit about this is that this is the first time I've actually watched a movie since it was released in theaters 13 years ago.
Ditto. However, when I watched it in 2007, I watched it via other
Well,
means. I'll just leave
when
it
I
at
was
that.
visiting our parents at the time when they just moved to their current house, right around that same year, and I went to go see that at the local theater, which was surprising that a small town in Iowa, even though about the size of probably more than 10,000 or so, I was I was really
About
surprised
12,000.
that they were able to show this film in their theaters there. But when I got there, it was just all me, all me there. But
Which is why the film only made 11
yeah,
million in
but
the US.
at least it's like when you're by yourself in a theater, probably about that size or maybe even bigger. It's sort of fun, to say the least.
I've never had that experience.
I've
I've come
I've
close
had
on a
it
few
at least
occasions.
twice, which was this one and the Russell Crowe Robin Hood movie. Yeah,
Interesting. Yeah, with me, this also is the second time I have viewed this film since it was released. I remember when I did see it, I was not impressed with it, and in fact, I disliked it. I didn't hate it, but I just disliked
I
it. I
was
was, and over the years, I've heard people defending it and all that, but I kept going back to my memory, going, it
it
wasn't
was a
that
little
great. It wasn't
meh
that
for
great.
me.
Yeah, and I remember watching it like some of the moments in the movie that happened early in the film were some of the scenes that they used for the trailer, and I remember being sort of disappointed how some of those scenes turned out. Um, for example, the flashback of a flashback,
Oh yeah.
going back to feudal Korea, there was a scene where Boraki, the evil Imugi or serpent, is chasing Harum and Naren, the male and female protagonist, in that flashback over a cliff, and I thought that was actually going to be part of the movie, given the trailer. And when I saw it was earlier in the film, I'm like, well, damn it, this is probably going to end up being a film I don't want to watch. And I remember walking away feeling underwhelmed
Hmm.
by it. I was not impressed by it. Like I said, I didn't hate it. I was disappointed, but at the same time, not too shocked that I was disappointed, given the fact that more or less it's a B
And
film.
the one
So,
thing that
yeah,
after watching this for the first time in 13 years, I completely forgot that there were at least a good decent amount of familiar faces within this film that were a
I was going
part
to
of
bring that
this.
up in the review.
Like Craig Robinson, who's famous for being in movies like in Hot Tub Time Machine or the show The Office, and then
Office.
Retta, who's the also a receptionist in the Parks and Recreation TV show, and
I thought
yeah,
that was
and
her.
then there was
One,
another guy.
I think it's an FBI gal or something. She was the secretary for, I forget the actor's name. He played Josh Lyman in The
and
West Wing, but
and
she
then
was
you
in The
got
West Wing.
John Ailes, who plays as Agent Judah Campbell. Um, and then
Yep.
was it Jeff Pearson, who's also made appearances in shows such as Dexter. You might have seen him before, but yeah, there were at least quite a handful of familiar faces, which I was surprised I totally forgot that they were in this film.
Well, the
Yeah, that
zookeeper,
guy and
um,
him.
he's in the current show Bob Hart's
He was
Abishola, and I
in Mike and
think he
Molly.
also made occasional appearances in King of
He was
Queens,
in
I think,
the
too.
show Mike and Molly, who he was the main star of that show.
Mike and Molly. Yep.
Yeah, I
Yep.
forget
Yeah,
what
since
was
you
his
brought it up,
name here again. I'm guessing. Uh, I'm not seeing it here right now, but yeah, I've also that guy looked familiar too.
yeah, since you brought it up, I wasn't gonna bring it up until we got into the review, but yeah, I was, excuse me, pleasantly surprised as to how many familiar Hollywood actors were in this. And, I mean, for both of us, it's been
Hmm.
13 years. So obviously, we're going to
Yeah,
forget a lot of stuff. And obviously, it did not make any sort of impression on us because we really didn't, uh, we didn't remember a whole lot of stuff.
it was just
So,
like a one and done. Never saw it again until 13 years later.
exactly. So, I mean, yeah, it was a pleasant surprise to, um, see so many familiar faces because during these last 13 years, there have been a number of those shows that I have watched. Like, my wife and I, year and a half, 2 years ago, went through the series Parks and Recs on Netflix. So, yeah, like that one gal you were talking about, I looked at her, I'm like, she looks like she could be that receptionist, but I wasn't
Hmm.
sure. So I just kind of let it be. But yeah, it was a pleasant surprise. I'm like, holy smokes, this South Korean B monster movie,
Action
you
adventure
know,
fantasy
uh,
film,
uh,
as a
action adventure monster fantasy sci-fi drama, blow 'em up, shoot 'em up in your face sort of film. That's why I had everything. I had all these actors, and at the time too, when this film is being produced, it was the most expensive South Korean film
Mhm.
produced at the time, and it's been since eclipsed by what I don't know, but
I think over the
yeah.
years, probably the most well known thing that still had me tied to this film was the composer Steve Jablonsky, who's I would say mostly known for doing the Transformers live action franchise. scores. He also composed for this film, and I would say he did.
Man.
I would say he before we get into this that I think he did a terrific job with this, and even doing, I would say, the most famous Korean song "Ariane." I think that's how you pronounce it, but yeah, it's like one of those like a really big song over there, and I think he really did a good job with that one.
Yeah, it's amazing that this monster movie production, got the
Mm.
talent that it did. I mean, a budget of roughly
Yeah, and that's
35
amazing.
million, and you were able to get some of these people. Yeah, and even the composer, I didn't even know about Jablonski. Yeah, I mean I'm still kind of blown away by all this. I'm just like, holy shit! Like, this South Korean B monster movie was able to get these people. Like, it's
Right.
just so crazy. And part of it is not only just because of the budget, but also the fact like you go up to someone, hey, I'm from South Korea, we're not really well known for our films. I made a really bad monster movie back in 99/2001 called Yongari. It looks like a sci-fi channel type of production, but you know what, will you be in my next film about serpents and dragons? It's incredible. I'm so amazed at the fact that these people are part of this film. It's
Hmm.
incredible. So, did we want to get into synopsis and then the rest of the review?
Yeah, let's get right to it.
All right, here's a synopsis of the film. Ethan Kendrick is a news anchor, or should I say a news reporter, given a medallion by Jack, a mysterious antique dealer, will aid him in protecting Sarah Daniels. Sarah is the Yu Yi Ju, excuse me, a person able to use her life spirit to an imugi, a serpent, and that life spirit will turn the imugi that consumes it into an all powerful celestial dragon. You see, every 500 years, the Aatrox army is on the hunt for the UGU. I keep Yujiju in order to use that life spirit to turn their evil imugi Baraki into a celestial dragon. The previous lives of Ethan and Sarah were reborn within them. Those previous individuals' names were Haram and Naren from feudal Korea. The Aatrox general uses Baraki to hunt down Sarah in present day Los Angeles, but after a while summons his army from Jack's antique shop. Los Angeles is under attack from the Aatrox army and Baraki, but Ethan and Sarah escape. However, they're eventually captured by the Aatrox, where they're taken to some barren location where Sarah is about to be sacrificed to Baraki. Ethan's medallion somehow destroys the entire Aatrox army, and during a sword fight, the Aatrox general coincidentally strikes the medallion, vaporizing himself. Dumbass. A good Imugi appears and does battle with Baraki, but is overpowered. Sarah sends her life spirit to the good Imugi, where it turns into a celestial dragon and battles Baraki. After a tussle, the dragon shoots a fireball into Baraki, incinerating it. Sarah's soul appears, telling Ethan she'll always love him and will be waiting for him. Jack also appears behind Ethan, telling him that they were given a great honor in the transformation. Ethan tells both of them goodbye, and the movie comes to a close. Okay, for me, in terms of how I'm going to review this, I have a laundry list eventually here of a bunch of questions that I think will help lead part of this discussion. However, I
I
will
hope.
start with this. You know your story is why did I write that? That's a typo. Oh, no, I didn't. I didn't write that wrong. You know your story is done all wrong when you have a flashback within a flashback. So,
Yeah,
early in the film, we get Ethan after he finds this scale of an Imugi, which I think is Baraki, right?
I would believe so because I
It's
mean
never made clear.
the movie starts out with parts of L.A. in ruins there for some strange reason. I thought it was a flashback at first, but no, it was like present right then and there.
we're never given an
Yeah.
explanation. But shortly, like within a few minutes after that, he thinks back to when he meets Jack in this antique shop somewhere in LA. And then Jack tells, no joke, roughly a 15-minute story of the Imugi and how every 500 years, Baraki and supposedly a good Imugi appear. They're supposed to battle. Um, and what we're given is this feudal Korea story about harem and Nero.
Hmm.
And Naren is the female. She is being hunted down by the Aatrox army because she has a special dragon tattoo on her left shoulder. And she is the one with the life spirit that whoever consumes it, whether it's the Batimugi Baraki or the Goody Mugi, that particular Imugi slash serpent gets the power and becomes a celestial dragon. The Batty Moogie slash dragon will destroy the earth should it consume that spirit, or the Goody Moogie, should it gets it and become a celestial dragon, will become a protector of the universe. Um, so that's kind of the whole point there. And Harem is sort of, I don't know if he's actually betrothed to Naren, but he actually, has a thing for her, obviously.
Hmm.
And they barely escape Baraki. And I think they die falling off that cliff, if I'm not
Yeah,
mistaken, right?
basically, it's what it alludes to. And after, when that flashback ends and goes back to Jack, they're in that flashback. That he mentions about them dying, and then now Naram and Harem are on Earth again, giving them a second chance to sort of redeem themselves and getting the Goody Moogie uh, the powers to become a celestial dragon.
Yeah. And so during this flashback, honestly, the story of Harem and Nero is the sort of story I would rather have seen than the story we actually got. Because I thought the acting during that flashback was better, and I thought the scenery was more beautiful. And it reminded me an awful lot of The Magic Serpent, a
A little bit,
movie
yeah.
I wouldn't have minded seeing redone, but of course that movie was a Japanese
You
production,
could
not a
maybe sort of
Korean.
say that this is somewhat of a remake of the Magic Serpent.
It's Magic Serpent in the present day slash light
Yeah.
is, is
But
what
no
it
frog
is.
this time.
No frog, no spider, no giant hawk or eagle.
Yep.
Just dragons slash
Hmm.
serpents. I have to say though too, before I forget, unlike Yonguri, which for all intents and purposes is laughably bad, the effects work for this film is still really good. Quite honestly, it's not perfect, but it's still really good. Like even 13 years later, uh, for a South Korean production, it's actually pretty
I
good.
was
It's better than even some major
I was
motion
gonna say,
pictures.
like, as far as a lot of the destruction scenes with the buildings crumbling and some of the other things too, that they still hold up pretty well after these 13 years. Although there are at least a few instances here and there which it didn't age quite well.
Oh yeah, yeah. But even then, like when you and I first saw Yongari on Sci-Fi Channel, like 2001, 2002, somewhere in
Hmm.
there. Um, Even then, that movie not only looked terrible, but the effects looked awful slash
Like
dated.
something that came out,
That's not so much the case
something
here with
that would have
Dragon
been made
Balls.
by the Asylum studio.
Oh, it was?
No, it looked like it would have.
Oh, because I knew Asylum, they made
They always make those rip-off
the
movies.
Atlantic Rim, and yeah, like they do these B one-offs or whatever of films that sort of are carbon copies of better
Just to
produced
try to
films
get
like
the
Pacific.
moolah from when those mainline movies come out, basically.
Yeah, they're awful. Don't bother with
Yeah.
them. Never going to cover them on here unless we're very desperate for content. I guess I've learned in my life to never say never.
Well, we've reviewed bad movies here and there, but
I don't know if anything's going to be as bad as those. And
yeah,
also, you probably remember these Craw and
yep.
Zarkor.
I know we've made some mentions about it in the past, but
Yeah, that's like if push comes to shove, that'll get covered on here. But we got plenty of content to keep us busy for probably another 10 years at
yeah.
least. But yeah, I'm still very pleasantly surprised as to how good those effects um, hold up. Um, so did you want to go on? Did you want to mention anything before we go on to my questions? Because here's what I was thinking about with my questions. I got quite a few of them here. Let me see. I wrote down 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 questions. And I thought maybe what we would do is I would raise those questions and we'd try to go point by point discussing slash trying maybe to answer them.
Well, let's just sort of go through some of the basics here. As far as the characters in this, and I know we mentioned about this before going into the synopsis of the film, that both of us completely forgot that there were at least a good handful of familiar faces within this film. And I think, for the most part, that they've done a pretty good job at what they were trying to do uh, in this film. And then, as far as the main characters or the protagonist, Jason Bear, who plays as the adult Ethan Kendrick, and then Amanda Brooks, who is Sarah Daniels within this, and the holder of the Yeo Yi Ju. Um, I think they did a decent job within their own rights. Although at times with Ethan, it seems like he wasn't part of the film from time to time.
He here's the thing, I will say this, the actors, the familiar faces did a decent job for the most part. And a lot of it is because they are trained slash veteran actors. So that's a big part of it. Um, Jason Bear and Amanda Brooks, I thought a decent job, but they weren't as good as those familiar
Hmm.
Hollywood faces. Bear, I thought though, was the worst between him and Amanda Brooks, and I hate to say that, but and and I don't know if he just wasn't coached all that well or what the deal was. Um, but I thought his character was stone faced most of the time, meaning that he didn't show a range of emotions or anything like
Hmm.
that. Amanda, and part of it again could be because of how her character is written or what have you, she showed, I thought, more range of emotions and all that than Bear did. Bear just more or less just kind of kept your
Yeah.
face on. Like there wasn't much in the way of any emotional versatility there throughout much of this film from
Hmm.
him, I thought.
Yeah, and both of those main stars there, they don't have a whole lot of filmography from what I'm seeing. As far as Amanda Brooks,
No.
she hasn't really appeared in feature films since 2013, which was The Canyons. But although she has made quite a few appearances in TV shows, and the last appearance was in Castle Rock as a psychiatrist back in 2018. And then as far as Jason Bear, he hasn't really appeared in any feature film since 2008, a year after D War, but that uh, he appeared in three more films after that. But um, he did at least uh, most recently make an appearance in Roswell, New Mexico TV show here as Trip in season 2 here.
Because he probably was tripping.
TRIPP. So
You know, I knew it was TRIPP, but
sure,
still.
sure you did.
I will have to say though that the characterizations though overall are pretty they're they're bare bones. We aren't given much for our characters. with the exception, I would argue, Harem and Naren, the two characters that only appear in like 15 minutes of the film in a flashback of a
Hmm.
flashback, I thought were better fleshed out than our main characters, I thought. And like I said, they're only in the movie for a sliver of the time, all things considered. And I felt more connected to those characters than I did the main
Yeah, and I was
characters.
just going to say that as far as the Korean actors and actresses that were in those flashbacks, I think they did, I would say, a better job, to say the least, as far as Hyun Jin as Harem and Hyojin Ban as Naran. I think they did a pretty good job.
Oh, absolutely. And again, like I said earlier, that's the film I would rather see because within that 15-minute flashback of a flashback, and I'm going to keep saying that because again, like I said,
I
that means your movie's in
I
trouble if you're doing
actually
that.
I
Um,
actually probably would have done this in a two-part film. It's like do those flashback things first and then do this present thing as the second part.
yeah, like you could have fixed that flashback of a flashback by doing, and I think this is what you're saying, is by starting the movie off with feudal Korea and that part of the story with maybe some narration or what
Mhm.
have you. Or even have it as sort of a mini movie of sorts within the larger film. Then you spend maybe another 5-10 minutes with Ethan as a child in the antique shop, discovering this medallion, having Jack sort of tell him briefly what it's all about, and then you get on with the movie because. And I'm just going to go ahead and say this, and I think unfortunately this may sort of spoil kind of where I stand a little bit on this film, is that there's not much of an actual story for much of this film. There really isn't. It's basically one giant chase scene without much substance and material otherwise. Most other movies, yes, in a general sense, have some sort of chase movies, like Terminator, for
Mhm.
example, is sort of like that. However, there are character moments, there are other story elements that help unravel the story and any mysteries that
You
are
get you get
within the
just
plot.
maybe a
We
little
don't get that with
well,
this film.
just I would say I would at least give it credit maybe just a little bit when Sarah and Ethan finally meet up with one another. But I would say most basically the entire film was basically set up within the uh, flashback and the flashback within the flashback there.
Yeah, but I think one way you could have fixed that is the feudal
Hmm.
story.
As a part one.
Yeah, then a quick few minute deal with Ethan in the antique shop and then present
Hmm.
day. Because like I said, there's not a whole lot of substance there in this actual movie, and you could cut out a lot of this and be fine with the overall story. It's not going to hurt the plot whatsoever because there's really, in a sense, when you pay attention to this film, there's really very little there in terms of substance. Um, and it wouldn't damage the film. In fact, I think it would enhance it quite a bit. Either that or you do what I want you to do, and that is you make that feudal Korea story. Because again, just within a 15-minute, what, like a 20% ish amount of the film, you have this flashback of the feudal Korea story. And it's told so much. It's actually more interesting. It's more intriguing. You get better actors, better characters, and really a
And
better
and the
story
and the
there.
one unique thing about it too is that I sort of forgot that they had this Lord of the Rings s sort of battle going on when that whole entire army for Buraki come up to that whole
Yeah.
village there, and I mean that itself can be possibly like the climax part right there of the part one of Dragon Wars.
Yeah. There were, in terms of decision making, in terms of how to tell the story, it's not. It, there are better decisions to be made that I think are obvious, but for whatever strange reason, that's not the route they
Hmm.
took.
Yeah, it's it's a little bit disappointed on the final decisions that they went about with Dragon Wars here. It would have been a heck of a lot better if they did this in a two-part.
Yeah, because when you do flashbacks of a flashback, you are setting yourself up to either confuse some members of your audience, and then two, it basically shows some ineptitude slash incompetence on the fact of you trying to tell a coherent, cohesive story. And again, like we just said, we provided at least two examples of how to fix that. There probably are even more that we just haven't thought
Mm,
of, but at least two of those examples are so much better than what we're actually given here with the
right.
film.
So I think
So, did you want me to go into my questions, or did you want to talk few about a few other things?
I've got one more thing as far as me talking about my thoughts on uh, the score for the film. What do you think of the score done by Steve Jablonsky?
I like it. I mean, I'm not a huge fan of Jablonski, but I would consider him part of my um he's good. Like if I had to rank him from exceptional to very good, good, fair, poor in terms of composers, I consider him good. He does a good job at what he does. The thing is, though, his music is not necessarily my cup of tea. I'm a person that likes to listen to more when it comes to at least scores, I like to listen to more rousing marches and themes and that sort of thing. That's not to say I'm against the kind of music he composes. I do think some of that stuff is unique and fun to listen to.
Hmm.
I just don't listen to that sort of music as often as I do scores that have more marches and rousing pieces to
Hmm.
them.
Yeah, for
Just because it's a personal preference
yeah
of
for
mine.
me, I really do like what he does overall, and I've listened to I know many years the Ari Rain song that's done here for Dragon Wars, and I think a couple other ones from this film. But I know I've listened to I would say a lot of his Transformers scores mostly. And I think I've listened to a couple other ones outside of that. But yeah, I would say he's probably in my top 10 to say the least as far as the best composers out there, along with Brian Tyler, Andrew Lockington, so on and so forth.
Mhm.
But other than
All right.
that, shoot your questions there.
All right. So we'll do one question at a time. This, in a sense, I think will give anybody who has not seen this film more of an idea of some of the problems with this film. But also, I think it helps us, you and I, to discuss other things about the film to give it more thoroughness. Because as I watched the film, I realized there were a bunch of questions that didn't make sense. And I understand that with a film like this, sometimes the questions are not going to yield good answers or any answer at
Mm,
all. But it's sort of, again, to let the listener know how, on some level, flawed this film is. But also, I do think it's going to help us with our overall discussion too. So, okay. So, first question is, what is the Aatrox army, and why in the hell did it somehow disappear into paintings and statues in the antique shop?
I don't know. I would just say it's a movie science. There's really no
Exactly.
explanation there.
In that flashback of a flashback, there I go again. We are not given any background of this Aatrox army. Who are they? We know what they're after,
I would
but
say
why do
it's
they want to destroy the
I would say
Earth?
probably the
You
only
know,
thing of who they are is I would say is the army for uh Buraki.
right. But are these lizard people in disguise? Are these demons in human form?
We've
We don't know anything about them. And then in that flashback of a flashback, we don't see them
well I
disappear.
know like when you mentioned about the like the lizard people and stuff, and I know I've uh uh looked at some of that stuff before during my free time and stuff, and like a lot of them, a lot of these people that follow this stuff, they'll say that they're shapeshifters and everything, and you can see that within the film themselves. So could they be
with the
could they actually
Japanese.
be lizard people? Who knows? Because I mean the general there, he shapeshifts quite a bit, but then when he goes into his original form, he never takes off his mask. So who is what does he really
Right.
look like underneath? So I mean, they could be like the lizard people, but who knows?
Yeah. So there's a pretty decent
Yeah.
problem right there. Okay. Second question. Why does Baraki vamp so much, missing out on numerous opportunities to consume Sarah and eventually her life spirit at the end? There are so many moments, I lost count, of where Baraki had Ethan and Sarah cornered or whatever,
hmm
and he could have just boom, like a snake, boom, snatch her up, been a celestial dragon, and that would have been it. But instead, he gets him cornered or trapped, and then he's just like ha ha ha, like he just kind of like plays around, like, or laughs or whatever you want to call it, and then right at the last second, either a helicopter comes in and shoots Baraki and distracts him or whatever, and then Ethan and Sarah escape, or something else happens that give Ethan and Sarah the
Or
opportunity
the
to
good
escape.
Imugi comes in and interferes.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm okay. I will let you get away with maybe one or two moments like that, but this happens so much in this film. I'm just like, I'm not rooting for Baraki, but I'm like, damn it, Baraki, you had him. Like, you had him like this many times. Like,
Yeah, and
and you didn't do anything
like
about it.
with Sarah's friend there when she gets bitten and everything there within that one scene, that he doesn't really make any hesitation there when she runs back after seeing the general come in and gets bitten and then
You want to know why? Because she is just there for body
yep.
count. She's not the main
And then after
character.
that you don't even see the boyfriend that she was with ever again.
No, no, you don't. I thought maybe he got stabbed, but I didn't
No,
see that.
no. All you
I
see
don't know.
the last time you see him is when that girl runs back towards that pool where Baraki was, and then she gets
Hmm.
bitten and then tossed or dropped into the pool there after Baraki bites her. I thought that he was going to eat her, but no, it just
Nope.
drops her. So that was also a little bit of a letdown too, because you would think that with animals and stuff like that they would just snatch it and have something to eat, but nope.
Oh well. Next question. Where was the Goody Moogie during this whole time, and why didn't we get that final battle in LA like the poster
That's
promised?
for some reason when I sort of thought about Dragon Wars from time to time over the years, I thought that that was sort of like the main thing, but no, I totally forgot that the main final battle was over at Baraki's like castle or whatever that this thing was located in, and I'm sure you'll have a question for that too, but
I've got
yeah,
plenty of
but
questions.
I could have thought that they would have at least had a couple encounters within this film, hence the title Dragon Wars.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, that whole the fact that the Goody Moogie doesn't show up until the very end is confusing. And I don't know if Ethan's medallion, and I got a question about that coming up soon here. If that has something to do with it, what the hell? Like where was it? And then second of all, sure, the battle in LA that we got still kind of fun to watch. But yeah, like the poster and all that, and because you want the stakes to be
we're like on the
higher in a
DVD
film
here.
like this, yeah, you want you want there to be stakes. You want people's lives to be at risk. You want real estate damage.
Well,
You
we
want
we do
that.
we do
And
get
we don't get
well we
that.
do get the like real estate destruction and everything,
You
but
could have had more with
it
two
was
of
all
them.
on Baraki though.
Well, yeah, in the
Yeah.
Aatrox army, but you would have had more with two dragons
Hmm.
there, or emoogies, I
Yeah.
should say.
And I thought that the Liberty Tower there, that was sort of the main um, thing, even on this cover
On the
here,
cover.
which is the tallest building there, or second tallest building in LA now. Um, that I thought it would like eventually crumble and then fall down, and I thought about it was like that for many years, but no, it was still standing after all that.
My next question has to do with the medallion. What exactly does Ethan's medallion do?
That's what I would like to know, and I would say the only thing that it probably had the purpose of was when the general quote unquote accidentally hit the medallion with his sword there, and probably trigger the Goody Moogie to come in.
Yeah, but I don't know. But
Yeah, it's still a
first, what we
mystery.
see is when Ethan is tied up there at the end, and Sarah's on the altar to be sacrificed, he somehow yells, and that, for whatever reason, activates the medallion, and in a very easy fashion,
Yeah,
vaporizes the Aatrox army. And then, the medallion's, like maybe this size or something
can't
like
really
that.
see.
And, oh, like this size.
Okay.
And then during this brief sword fight between Ethan and the general with a medallion that is this size somehow, just by sheer happenstance, happens to strike it with the end of his sword and vaporizes himself. And I'm just like, I'm all for suspension of disbelief because this is a movie about serpents and dragons, but that right there is crossing the line.
Yeah. Um. Yeah. Other than that, I really can't think of anything. But although they sort of mention about it when it comes to the flashback the first flashback, where Jack mentions about the medallion protecting Harem there, or or whoever gets protected by that medallion, so to speak.
But then again, though, too, and I probably missed that, and I'm not saying you're wrong,
I am
but
right. You're wrong.
what if if what you're saying is true? Okay, we should have had at least one or two more instances of that being shown earlier in the movie. Like maybe have either Baraki come close to consuming Ethan and Sarah, and like the medallion, like, I don't know, let's say flashes of bright light on Baraki and temporarily blinds it and allows them to get away. Or part of the Atrax army comes and is about ready to capture him, but then the medallion vaporizes the small portion of them and allows. We should have had at least one or two examples of that earlier in the film, and we don't. It's basically a literal piece of jewelry for Ethan to wear up until this final
Mhm.
battle.
Yeah.
I don't know. My next question, and I have sort of an answer to it, which I think could be partially right. Uh, what is the barren setting at the end of the movie? And what I have down is that I have a feeling it's the Atrox Army
That
headquarters.
could be one thing, but then also the one thing I wanted to point out too and earlier is that where the hell is this thing located?
I was going to ask you that. I was just going to say, where is this? Is this underground?
It can't be
Is this
underground.
like in some remote location somewhere? Like, where
It
is
can't be
it?
underground for one thing because you have the sky and everything.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's right. Yeah.
So it.
A sky.
Duh, are you dumb?
Du-du-du.
So yeah, it's they never again they Don't even tell you. Because the Aatrox army, for some strange reason, come out of these scrolls and everything. So it's all jumbled.
Dumbest thing. So dumb. All right, moving on.
You got nothing else
I'm a,
to respond to that?
like I said, like I said, there for some of these there may be no answer, and I have to
I
live
thought
with
you
that
had all
because
the
this
answers,
movie.
damn it. Come on.
If I did, I probably would enjoy this movie more. Next question. How was Ethan able to pinpoint the exact quote Sarah unquote he was looking for in the database for the LA area?
That's what I would like to know too, because I mean they mention, or at least he mentions, to Craig Robinson's character, if I tried, Bruce, that it's like, oh, I need to find this Sarah and everything, you know, where Jack mentions about her name and everything in that flashback. But and then Bruce comes up with thousands of different Sarahs that are on this database and everything,
Yeah,
and then you get this one creeper dude that takes a picture of Sarah when she was over at the I'm guessing the LAPD office for
police. Yeah,
questioning on that whole gain thing after she leaves the bar from her.
a
Yeah,
small scuffle that we get
yeah.
earlier.
And he takes a picture of her and then just leaves. And then he comes back, I would say maybe a few scenes or so later, and has her photo on hand. And then Ethan grabs the picture, but I don't even, it doesn't, it shouldn't even, I don't even think it shows like the
No, it
or
doesn't.
the
It doesn't.
tattoo or scar.
She's
Yeah,
wearing just a regular
yeah.
T-shirt,
But
but he's there with Bruce in Ethan's
yeah,
office, in his own office, and he just says, "That's her," and that's it. That's all we get. He goes, "That's her."
yeah. And I would like to know how he would know that specifically. I mean, it's like I know Jack mentions her name in that flashback to the young Ethan, but he doesn't. I don't even think he really described uh, anything about Sarah, or at least a photo, because I know Jack beat up all like the three guys there that were, trying to take advantage
Football
of
players.
Sarah there outside the bar and everything. I mean,
Yeah.
you would think after that whole roundabout scuffle there that he would have taken Sarah back to the antique place or something of the sort, and then maybe tell Ethan, "Hey, I found Sarah."
Jack's an awful protector.
That ends like it just makes it like that he knew who she was, but there wasn't really any evidence pointing to that.
My next question, and I don't have it written down, I just thought about it, was, and this is sort of a two-parter. When Sarah sees on the news that a dragon scale has been revealed in the LA area, she leaves the gym to go home. She looks in this book. Number one, what is that book? And number two, when Brandy, her friend, comes to check on her, Sarah has all of these pages from that book plastered all over her living room, and says she believes those pages will protect her. What's that book, and why does she think those pages will protect her?
Well, with Sarah basically being Naren, like like the second version of
Right.
Naren, I'm guessing like some of the like probably some of those instincts from Naren and stuff probably get triggered in a way, and I'm guessing But the other thing, though, is that where the hell did Sarah get this book out of nowhere? It's like, even though that this is a reincarnation of Naren, like if this was Naren's book, how the fuck did she get it?
Well, like you said, I was just about to say, where does this book come from? Because nowhere in either the first flashback or the second flashback are we told about any sort of book or magical spells that are used for protection or anything of that sort. This just happens. It's a one and done deal.
I think this is probably a good reason why I got some beer for this, and like two beers to be exact. I can't even see it because of that background of yours.
Well, damn you! I only have one beer.
So yeah, I mean, I've got nothing else.
Oh, I just saw it here on YouTube. Yeah, somehow this can got camouflaged. I gotta like put it right here.
Well, I can't even see because you're cutting it off there from the camera there.
Oh, nothing ever works.
You just gotta bring it up a
So-
little bit more.
So, either that or get rid of the background.
Get
Otherwise,
rid
you're
of it.
just seeing all my books and stuff.
Get rid of it. I mean, you're seeing my DVD shelf here of all the movies and figurines and stuff, even my kitchen.
I'll do it here in a bit. We're in the middle of the podcast. All right. Next question. You ready?
As ready as ever.
How come Jack didn't do more in the movie, especially protecting Sarah and helping out with the carnage in LA?
Well, you could say he somewhat protected Sarah from that whole scuffle thing, but then even when Sarah questioned that, he basically left right after all that. I was like, what the hell?
Yeah.
It's like Jack should have just taken her back to the antique shop there and protected her there from now on.
And allowed, because he knew Ethan as a young boy, and he knew Ethan was eventually going to come and see him. He would have had them right there and would have been like, all right, we're here together. Let's get everything to the goody
Well,
mookie.
at least he did have at least a few instances there where he did disguise himself as some of these random people, and then after Ethan and Sarah part ways from that quote-unquote strange character or out-of-place character, that they transform into Jack there.
Yeah, he did more to protect her from 3 loser football players than he did during the entire assault on LA by this Terminator-like army that was not going to stop until they got her. I mean, it just, hence the name Sarah. Sarah Connor. I don't know.
Beats
Do you
me.
think there could be some Terminator references
Beats
here?
me.
It boggles my mind because, you know, it just makes no sense. I really have no answer for that. And another question here, do I have it here? No, I don't. Another question I don't have written down that I just came up with. You know, because the Aatrox army came out from paintings and statues and all that crap from the antique store in which Jack was, you know, basically owned and took care of, did he know that the Aatrox army was there in those paintings and in those statues? And if so, why didn't he do more to either seal them up or to destroy those paintings and statues or whatever to prevent them from ever showing up again?
In my honest opinion, I think he might have known about that, and
Then he's an asshole.
And if he did, why the hell did he even keep them around? Because they were like right in his antique store there to begin with.
Right, he should have done something more.
And either that or just fucking burn the shit.
Like I said, burn the paintings, destroy the statues.
Yeah.
Like, Now, Jack, is he supposed to be that old sensei
Hmm.
guy from the feudal
Yeah,
Korea?
because when they go into that flashback with from the other flashback, he rolls up his right arm sleeve, and you see that scar where the general slashed him.
I
Yep,
missed that.
and then they do it like
I miss,
a brief flashback within the flashback.
I missed that.
Hey,
Um,
the background's gone.
so then, so then, another question I don't have written down that just popped up. If that was indeed that old sensei,
It is.
how come in the first flashback at the beginning of the movie and all that, how come we are never told or nothing is sort of implied that outside of Harem and Naren, that this guy's soul also will continue to live on?
Beats me. I mean, you got me there. But then too,
I'm starting to dislike
and
this
then
movie a
and
little
then
bit
too
more.
with the whole spear and everything, with the very end part of this movie with Sarah becoming a spear and everything. It's like, what the hell does Ethan do now? Now that his love, the love of his life, is now a spirit, and then now he's probably gonna have to wait till like decades and stuff until he goes into, you know, that next level, being a spirit and everything.
I have an idea, but it's too dark, so I'm not going to share it. Next question. This is sort of something you brought up a bit earlier. Why did Brandy and her boyfriend need to die? But you were saying earlier, apparently the boyfriend didn't die, and I thought the boyfriend did because Brandy got killed by Baraki, and I thought the general like took a sword and
Not from what
stabbed
I've seen, no.
uh, the
It's like
boyfriend.
he did,
Then why were they
it's like
important?
he did, well, the general, he did sort of unsheath like the base of that sword, and then you see it come up and everything. But then,
The penis.
but then that's the only instance of the last time you see Brandy's uh, boyfriend there. I'm not sure if they.
He
Yeah,
disappears
I'm not
too.
even sure if they even list him on this cast here. They do list Amy Garcia, who plays as Brandy, Sarah's friend here, but they don't even mention about the boyfriend. But yeah, that's that. You don't even see the boyfriend being killed, besides Brandy being bitten by Baraki.
So then two sub questions to this question.
Question within a question. This
Two
is gonna be
questions within a
shit.
question. Well, this tells you how just fouled up this film is. One is um, the general said, I think he said something to the effect of, there you are, or something like that. So if that is true, if I remember correctly, if he did say something like that, why did he kill them? Were they important somehow?
I
And then, second of all, even if he knew they were friends of Sarah's, why would he kill them? Wouldn't you think he would maybe hold them hostage so that maybe they could help him locate Sarah more effectively?
I, I don't know. I mean, I don't even think I'm not even. I don't even remember him mentioning about like, "Oh, I found you" or something of this sort.
He said something, and I forget. I don't know if it was "there you are" or "you're not getting away." He said
Well,
something
I
to him.
know about him saying about that towards the end when they were trying to have Sarah sacrificed on that table there over at, I'm guessing, their headquarters and everything, but I don't remember him saying something like that earlier.
He did to Brandy and her boyfriend.
Well, I didn't even catch it, so.
Yeah. Damn it. All right, next question. Roll out. How did the military know that Sarah and Ethan were going to the top of the Liberty Building? Because they had a chopper waiting for them up there.
Again, I don't know, to say the
They didn't
least.
collaborate with the military at
Not
all.
even the FBI,
At
not
all?
not Agent Joda Campbell or anything. And then also, uh, after seeing this for the first time in 13 years, I thought originally that Judah Campbell was Jack, but then as we go in deeper and then actually find out, it's like, nope, that's not Jack at all.
Nope.
I mean, it's like
Next
they
question.
basically built up his character just to try to kill off Sarah in order to, try not to have all this or try to stop everything that's going on right now and have it, basically delay for another 500 years. So it's what was
For
his
those who are
character?
listening, I'm
I would
shaking
say,
my head.
was his character really that necessary?
I know the answer to that. Me. No. Ooh, me.
Well, that answers it.
Next question. They took the stairs all the way to the top of the Liberty Building. That would take a lot longer than it actually did. And why aren't they winded when they get to the
But
top?
then the other question is, why did they go up to that building to begin with, trying to after they're getting chased by Baraki?
There, yeah. Oh,
I mean, I think there's going to be so many questions that after all this, there's going to be even more questions.
take a drink. If you have a question about the movie, take a drink.
I'm going to do that right now.
Oh, man. There you go. For those who are listening to the audio form, Jason took a drink.
If you heard me there. But yeah,
All right.
yeah, there's just, I would say in the end, there's just going to be so many other questions left unsaid. Or, yeah.
Okay, so here's my final question about the actual story in this film that I came up with. Baraki sure gets away with a lot of damage with minimal police and military presence throughout much of the movie. Why?
I think you know my answer to this one here.
Here's this giant serpent. You would think it would come up on radar, people would see it and
even
report it. There
even
would
at
be
the
police
beginning
and
of the
military all over the
even at the
place.
beginning of the film too, when it opens up with part of LA and ruins there. And
Right, like what happened? Was that Baraki or was that the good?
it would have
Regardless,
to
you
be
would think something would
Baraki.
be reported. Yeah, well then, like, you would have had everybody around that area probably killed or destroyed somehow, and then everybody would have been on notice. There's this army slash giant snake running
Mm-hmm.
around.
Yeah, I really don't know. There's just
Now,
so many mysteries to this film.
my final question overall is: since there apparently has been a sequel in limbo for roughly 4 years, do you want a sequel to this movie?
I've got a condition. If this sequel does actually happen, that if the flashback within the flashback, if they actually make this movie as a prequel to Dragon Wars, then do it. Just do it.
Just do it.
That would be my only condition, is if they do the flashback within the flashback for this sequel and make it as a prequel.
the feudal
Yeah.
Korea. Yeah, I was thinking like, yeah, if they did that movie was so much more. That
And then
15 minutes of footage in this film was so much more interesting, and you could build a
and
better
then
story. Because again, what we got in the real film is a giant chase scene with very little
because if they
substance.
do that, then at least it would make parts of our arguments earlier in this episode, I would say, a little bit more worth it, and probably would make the two-parter, I would say, all the worth all the worthwhile, and I would say it would make everything so much more sense and how everything came to be.
It would definitely answer some questions, but it still wouldn't answer
Hmm.
all of them. Um, because I mean, because if you did a prequel, it's still not going to answer some of the present day questions involved with Ethan and Sarah, just because of the circumstances they were in and all
Hmm.
that. So yeah, I mean, outside of it being potentially a prequel and telling that feudal Korea story, which is what I would rather see more than anything else, because I think that would have been a damn good
Hmm.
film,
Yeah.
actually. Because, like I said, and I've said this millions of times, and the reason why I say it is because I'm so disappointed because there was huge missed opportunity
Hmm.
there. Because just that 15 minutes of footage, you had better actors, better characters. I cared more about those characters than I did with Ethan and Sarah and just about everybody else. You had more substance to the story, it seemed like. You had more of the hero's journey, very stereotypical
Or
storytelling. And the regular Dragon Wars film that we got, it's such a bare bones mess of a
I would
story, really.
also maybe say that if this if this was going to be a one and done movie and no sequel or prequel for that matter, I would say they should have at least started the movie with feudal Korea at that point, and then sort of build up to the young Ethan, and then having Jack tell the story and everything to him, and then go into present day. Then everything.
Hmm.
Then you wouldn't even have the flashback within the flashback. It's sort of like trying to get everything built up to the present there.
Hmm. Yeah, and again, that goes back to one of those first points we made that there are at least two ways you could have fixed that, and it would have made everything so much better. Like that alone would have helped the movie. It wouldn't solve everything, of
Hmm.
course, but it would have helped some at least one or two major issues within the
Right.
film and made it more
Hmm.
palatable. So unless you have anything else you wish to bring up, I figure we go into our final thoughts
Final
and a
thoughts.
rating. Okay, so for anybody who's not aware, we do buy, rent, or pass. Buy obviously means we highly recommend it. Rent means there are some things worthwhile, so it's worth checking out when you get the time, but don't be in a
Hmm.
hurry. And pass is obviously don't bother with it. You want me to go
Yeah.
first? All right, so here we go. Dragon Wars is a significantly more competent movie than 1999's 2001's Yongari. Shim Hyung-rae put together a movie with more competent actors and personnel behind the camera. The result is a movie that is mildly fun but also filled with numerous flaws and shortcomings. As I mentioned earlier, the feudal Korea story, which took up nearly 15 minutes of the first 20 minutes of the movie, was a story I would have rather wanted to see. The actors were better, and the story seemed more intriguing. It also reminded me so much of The Magic Serpent, a movie that I've come to really enjoy over the years. The special effects work is a tremendous step up from the sci fi channel esque effects of Yongari. The ending, however, is fairly disappointing. We never did talk about that, actually.
Well,
While
you
the
did in
Imugi
the
Dragon
synopsis.
Battle. Well, yeah, but we didn't do it in our discussion. Did you enjoy it?
Eh, so so.
I sort of enjoyed it too. It was fun, but I would have done it
Yeah.
differently in some respects. While the Imugi Dragon battle is fairly entertaining, but the stakes seem moot. The poster showed us dragons battling in LA, but we get a barren wasteland for the setting of our final confrontation. Not only are the stakes lessened by this, despite the fact that whichever Imugi consumes Sarah's life spirit, but the overall stakes are neutered. We never find out about LA afterwards and are to assume the Aatrox army just upped and left LA immediately after the capture of Ethan and Sarah. If the point of the Aatrox army feeding Baraki Sarah's life spirit to dominate the world, then why wouldn't part of that army stay back and continue to fight for the city? The movie, in its logic and reasoning, is a mess. Characterizations are severely lacking as well. I never come to care much for Ethan or Sarah over the course of a 90 some odd minute movie, continuing to make the final battle less interesting. I felt for Harem and Naren in those 15 minutes than I did Ethan and Sarah. The movie starts off promising, but continues to unravel as it progresses, sadly. It's a giant step up from Yongari and is mildly competent when compared to most other kaiju films, but it doesn't have the heart of many of those other films. With that said, Dragon Wars is better than I had remembered. It is entertaining enough to get you through part of an afternoon, but it's not something to hold in high regard. It's still worth checking out at least once. Rent.
Hmm. So, for me, as far as this movie goes, with this being the first time watching it in 13 years since it first came out, and seeing it now, I would at least. I know I've mentioned before that I was fairly surprised and totally forgot that some of the familiar faces were in this film. And as far as that goes, I think they did a pretty good job for that. And as far as the two protagonists in this film, I think they did pretty decent. But I think the ones that stood out the most, I would say, are the Korean actors, particularly Hyunjin as Harem, and Hyojin Ban as Narin. I think they did a pretty good job in their roles for this film. I think they did better than the rest of the cast members listed on here. And as far as the visual effects, with it being 13 years later, I think quite a bit of it has held up pretty well. Some of them haven't aged too well. But as far as the story and the plot for this movie, it's a mess. after all the questions and answers, and then more questions after our little discussion on this film. And I would say, as far as the overall ness of Dragon Wars, I'd say it's something that you probably don't need to watch a whole lot. It's to me, it's it's a simple rent for me. It could almost get close to being a pass.
Yeah, I mean, I struggle with that. Like, if you had turned off the movie after the first 20, 30 minutes and told me, what would you rate this movie at this point? I would have said it's a big buy. Like, because of that flashback. Like I said, within the first 20 minutes of the film, you have 15 minutes of that approximately being that flashback. And I would have said, this is a buy. Like, this is a movie I would actually try to watch more often. And then as you progress, you become more disappointed and you begin to see more of the cracks within the finish of the
And
film.
then, as you
And
mentioned too, if a movie has a flashback within a flashback, that can always be a recipe for disaster.
you know you are in
Yeah.
trouble because, like I said, that's a simple fix.
And
And
then
we,
with
like,
Mr.
again,
President
to sound
Geek,
like a broken record, we gave two
and
examples of
then
how to
with Mr.
fix it.
President Geek here responding, Dragon Wars blarg.
That
Oh.
was me. I just decided to do
Sure,
something.
whatever.
No, seriously, that was me. But yeah, it just it is disappointing because we were promised certain things, like on the poster with the dragons. We don't get that. The LA assault is still kind of fun to watch still in some respects. The effects work, though, is definitely a big step up from Yongari. And it ages pretty decently. I mean, it's
I would
not
say even
fantastic,
with the
but it's
budget that they have, they did a pretty. I would at least give them credit that they at least did a pretty good job.
exactly, yeah. I mean, and this was produced 6 years after the 2001 edit of
Hmm.
Yongari. And we know how terrible
Yeah.
that was, on all fronts. So yeah, it just it's disappointing. It is a step up, a big step up from that film. And I mean, when I think about it, when compared to other kaiju tokusatsu films, especially coming out of Japan more specifically, in some respects, it does certain things better than a few of those films, like the digital effects work in many respects. Of course, there are some exceptions to that. But other than that, it's just like it's fine. Like, if you don't think about it as you're watching, if you it's literally one of those films where you just got to sit back and not think as you're
Hmm.
watching the film. Because if you start thinking about it like we did, and that's part of our job, we try to give as objective of a discussion as we can about a film, regardless of whether or not we like the film. Um, you know, it just when you start thinking about it, you're going to go bonkers like we have during this whole podcast. It's just like there were several opportunities to make this good, if not great, and they decided to go meh, and in some cases, bleh. So it's disappointing because Shim Hyung Rae has
Hmm.
improved his craft an awful lot just in 6 years. I mean,
Yeah, and
there was
I was
promise
actually
there.
taking a look at his filmography as far as uh, his director post, and his uh, last movie that he has done so far is the Last Godfather, which was done 3 years after Dragon Wars. So he hasn't really done
Interesting.
anything since. But they do have a thing listed here as a producer, Dragon War, Mysteries of the Dragon. So that I'm guessing that is the sequel.
That's the name of the
Yep.
sequel, yeah. The supposed
Hmm.
sequel. Whether or not we'll see it, time
Well,
will tell. It's already been about
it
4
says
years.
here in just this couple sentences here, in March 2016, it was announced that the sequel entitled D War 2 Mysteries of the Dragon would be co-financed with China's H&R Global Pictures. The film's release date is to be determined.
And it's been
Yep.
4 years. It doesn't take a movie 4
Nope.
years to be made. That tells you there's some problem somewhere, and that's usually more times than not a good
Hmm.
sign. Well, with that, we thank you so much for listening and or watching us. Again, starting it's not set in stone, but approximately August 22nd, we are going to start Toku Zone for a
Series
while. We will be
premiere.
covering
Woo! Yeah.
Yes. We'll be covering Johnny Sacco and his flying robot. The very first episode, we will do our best to, through research, obviously, try to find as much information as we can on the production history and all that of Johnny Sacco. And then we're going to get into discussing um, the first 3 or 4 episodes of the show. And then every episode after that will be just episode discussions until we reach the
And
end
then
of the
also
series.
some miscellaneous news tidbits on other tokusatsu related topics too.
Yep.
And
So,
then before we leave, just want to mention again that we are on these streaming and podcast networks. And as far as the streaming networks, obviously YouTube, Twitch, Facebook Live, Periscope, and D Live. And then as far as podcast networks, Apple Podcasts, Google Play Music, iHeartRadio, Spotify, and TuneIn. And then as far as social networks, You can like and subscribe to us at these following social media websites, just searching for Daikaiju Network, and you can find us on our website over at daikaijunetwork.com. So with that,
All right. Thank you so much for listening and or watching, and we will see you in a couple of weeks when we enter the Toku Zone.
ooh, bye everyone. Ooh.